Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. And that's your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Welcome back. A little bit of video from the House version of the investigation into the Afghan withdrawal / cluster blank. And it's amazing. I'm just a regular Joe, regular guy, no smarter, no dumber than anybody else. And these people are all supposedly highly educated, know much more about government and defense of this country. And I say they, I mean the people in the Senate and or the House of Representatives. And there's one question that so far I haven't seen has been asked. So let's listen a little bit and then I'll comment.
Was there an actual formal request made to the Taliban fight by the United States to stay past August 31st? Was that a request that was then denied, that you were taking into account in that decision?
I don't make decisions, Congressman. I provide advice.
In your recommendation.
I was asked for what's called best military advice. I'm not aware of a formal request to the Taliban one way or the other on saying past the 31st. I am very familiar with the advice that we provided on the 25th.
Before the fall of Kabul, did we actually have formal Taliban agreement upon an August 31st departure date?
I'm not sure what you mean by formal, but I think that's
Had there ever been a point where the United States went to the Taliban saying that we are planning to leave on August 31st? Sure. And I'm talking about prior to the fall.
Now, let's ask ourselves a question. Even the anti-Trump, I think Trump's a traitor crowd, which is ridiculous. They're saying request deals. Trump would have said to them, listen, we're going to pull out. We're planning on the last day to be August 31st. We'll let you know as that date approaches whether that's feasible or not for us to get, that people would need to get out. Americans, number one. Afghan people that have helped the United States over the years that are now at serious risk, number two. And then lastly, the military. The military doesn't leave until the civilians who have to get out are out. That's standard and moral, I might add. You don't request, you tell them. As August 31st got closer and closer, and we saw we weren't going to make that deadline, we would tell the Taliban, we're taking another 10 days. If you so much as jaywalk, we will bomb you into the Stone Age. Clear? And these people like that are very authoritarian, i.e. the Taliban in this case, unlike the Biden administration, they're kind of the same in the way that how they put their authority on other people. They understand power. They understand a strong leader. They understand force. And they would have said, oh, okay. Because they know they're going to win in 10 days. They can walk in. They've already won. It's just a matter of formality.
Yeah, I think from a policy perspective, Zal Khalilzad could give you the detailed information on that. I do believe the Taliban knew that we were departing on the 31st. We announced it.
But you weren't aware of it?
I'm not aware of a formal agreement, per se, but I think Zal Khalilzad could give you better definition of that.
General McKenzie, the Washington Post reported on August 28th that the Taliban offered to allow the U.S. military to take responsibility for security in Kabul. Did you meet with Mullah Baradar to discuss such an offer?
Now, here's the question. Maybe it was asked and answered. I haven't seen it. Between the January 20th swearing in of President Biden and August 31st, how many troops were withdrawn? Because what they're saying is they left the airport uncovered. They left all that stuff behind. They left civilians behind, Americans behind, because they didn't have the manpower of the time. Okay. How many were pulled out from January 20th to August 15th when Cabal fell? That's an interesting question. They say they didn't have enough to cover the airport and Cabal plus the airport, other airport. Okay. Wasn't 2,500. Okay, wasn't enough. How many got pulled out? How many were there the day Joe Biden got sworn in? I think that's a fair question to ask.
I met with Mullah Baradar in Doha on 15 August to pass a message to him that we were withdrawing, and if they attempted to disrupt that withdrawal, we would punish them severely for that.
But did he offer to allow you to have security over all of Kabul? Not
As
just the
part of that conversation, he said, well, why don't you just take security for all of Kabul? That was not why I was there. That was not my instruction.
All right, I get that from a military point of view. My orders and my mission was X. I think it's a little rigid and a little CYA, but okay, I'll give them that.
And we did not have the resources to undertake that mission.
Did you convey the offer, however, to the president?
The offer was made in the presence of the president's special representative to Afghanistan.
Do you know if the SRAP conveyed it to the president?
I don't know, but it was conveyed to my chain of command.
So,
Okay, it was conveyed to my chain of command. The guy's a 4-star general, okay? When you go up the chain of command from a 4-star general, there isn't a hell of a lot of room. I mean, you're bumping your head on the ceiling here, okay? Who else? Who else in his chain of command? My guess is the Department of Defense, Secretary of Defense, and then the president. Is there anybody higher ranked than General McKenzie? He's a 4-star general. Not to my knowledge. So he kept saying up the chain of command, which means up. You don't request things or give information down, you give them up. So who's above him? Secretary of Defense and the president. Unless there's a 5-star general I don't know about, maybe there is.
who made the decision to turn down the Taliban offer to allow the U.S. military to secure Kabul and put the safety of our troops in the hands of the Taliban?
I did not consider that to be a formal offer, and it was not the reason why I was there. So I did not pursue it. So if someone actually made a decision, that would have been me.
Now, that's tap dancing a little bit. I didn't consider it a formal offer. As in what? It had to be notarized by a notary. I mean, come on. That's threading the needle a little tight, even though I do have some respect for General McKenzie, unlike a lot of the others. He seems to be a much more straight shooter than Milley is. Milley is just a left-wing progressive whack job, if you want my opinion. He wants to know about white rage, too. That's nuts. This guy's a real military man. So I have a lot more respect for him. So that's threading the needle a little tight, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
So we don't know if it was conveyed to the president. We don't know.
I do know it was conveyed to my chain of command.
There you go. His chain of command again. Who else could that be? Who is higher than a 4-star general as far as command goes? Secretary of Defense and the president. Last time I knew, somebody can correct me in the comments.
General McKenzie, isn't it true that the president rejected your best military opinion and advice as to how quickly to withdraw American troops from Afghanistan?
Well, I will say this: it has been my view that I recommended a level of 2,500, a level that would have allowed us to hold Bagram and other airfields as well. Once you go below that level and make a decision to go to zero, it is no longer feasible to hold Bagram.
Now, I understand that. I get it. And knowing that below 2,500 in the expert opinion, I consider General McKenzie a very expert opinion. Why did they decide to go lower? And what I asked at the beginning of this video is the question nobody seems to be asking. We knew from last year even that we had a withdrawal. We had the timetable. Why didn't we start moving equipment out? Why did we leave over 400,000 small arms with ammunition? Helicopters, jets, well, they can't fly them. Okay, whatever. All kinds of trucks and Humvees and 80-something billion, I understand. You had months and months and months to get that stuff out of there. And you didn't even have to bring it back to the United States. You could have brought it. It's not that far of a flight to your NATO headquarters and your army bases in Europe, for that matter. Christ, I would have gave them the Israelis. Let somebody get some use out of them. Instead of throwing them away to your enemy, why wasn't that stuff slowly taken out over time? Because they would notice, the Afghans? Well, of course they knew you were leaving. They knew anyway. Biden asked the Afghan president at the time to lie and say, even if the Taliban are overrunning the country, don't say. Put up a smiley face on everything and everything's all right. Is this just Biden's screw up? Is it really that simple? Why wasn't this stuff slowly taken out? Well, nobody gave the order, they're going to say. How come? My God, I'm just a regular guy walking down the street, and I knew that. Why weren't you taking this stuff out over time? Especially the stuff that's easy to transport. All the small arms, all the Humvees, tanks. Those big transport planes can carry a ton of stuff. Give them to the Israelis. Give them to some of our allies. Instead of giving them to your enemy, I don't get it. Why wasn't that done? And I've yet to hear a decent answer, even the question even asked.
But that was your best opinion and advice.
That remains my view now as it was then.
Congressman, that I support the president's decision. You also heard me say that I don't view this choice as a no-cost, no-risk choice. I do believe that if we left 2,500 people there for a long and extended period of time, you'd eventually have to reinforce those people.
But that's not the point. That's what they keep saying over and over and over. That's why we didn't leave them. That's why we didn't leave them. You leave a big force there, the force you had there originally. And then you get out the civilians and the equipment and the Afghans that helped us. All the American citizens first. Afghan citizens that helped us for the last 20 years that are in mortal danger. The bulk of our equipment. At least blow the stuff up. Make it piles of scrap. I mean, that's common practice. That's why Richmond burned down in the Civil War. It wasn't because of the Union bombardment. It was because they blew up and burned down their ammo depots, and it burned the city to the ground. And it hit a warehouse full of whiskey, which was like gasoline, and it didn't help. That's common practice when your enemy is coming. You blow up your arms and your ammunition. It was like that in 1865, and it's still true today. Why wasn't that done? Why weren't the troops stay there until all things were squared away? Nobody wants to answer that or ask it.
Because the Taliban was committed to attacking us.
Mr. Secretary, I understand all that. What we're trying to get to is, what did the president know? Did he forget what was told to him, or is he not being truthful?
I view that as an inappropriate question, and I won't.
Well, you may, but the American people don't.
No, you're right. The American people don't consider it an improper question. Now, the Secretary of Defense, of course he would. He works directly for the president, considers that inappropriate because it's implying dementia. And even if that was true, he wouldn't say. So I can understand him saying that, but it doesn't mean the congressman was wrong.
The American people want and deserve accountability. And we even have service members like Lieutenant Colonel Stuart Scheller being thrown in the brig for suggesting that. The public's faith in our institutions continues to erode precisely because everyone in the D.C. bubble appears to have some sort of immunity on the basic standards the rest of America is expected to live by. This is quite clearly one of the biggest military and foreign policy blunders since our withdrawal from Vietnam.
That's why I titled this episode, Everybody's Guilty, so no one's to blame. It's an old saying I heard years and years ago. Well, what the hell? Everybody's guilty, so nobody's to blame.
So my question for all of you is very simple. Where does the blame lie? Mr. Secretary Austin.
With nobody.
Well, first of all, I am responsible for everything that happens that DOD does, and it does a lot. I remain focused on defending this country, and that's going to be my focus for the.
Well, in all fairness, sir, I don't know enough of your background and your character to comment, but you've worked for a lot of military industrial complex companies, as they used to call it. I'm not sure which ones, but they pay a ton of money. And you'll be going there after you're gone from here. So I take that with a grain of salt. I think he does care about the country. I believe he's a patriot. I have no doubt about that. But I think he's working for an incompetent president and administration. And he's got to cover them the best they can and cover his own behind. Tough juggling act.
Foreseeable future. Secondly, I would remind you that we just evacuated 124,000 people.
I appreciate
17 days.
that you think that was a big success, evacuation, but the blame for the disastrous withdrawal that everyone agrees was a disaster, who's to blame for that?
Silence. Like I said, everybody's guilty, so nobody's to blame.
I'll let the silence speak for itself. General Milley, you said earlier this month that it's possible that we would work with the Taliban to conduct strikes against ISIS-K in Afghanistan, presumably referencing our over-the-horizon capabilities. But today you testified, you said, quote, the Taliban remains a terrorist organization with ties to al-Qaeda. So are you now suggesting that the United States form some sort of strategic partnership with a terrorist organization?
Strategic partnership, no. Cooperation, some things, yes. We've cooperated with evil regimes and evil dictators before. The enemy of my enemy is my friend type nonsense. Look at Joseph Stalin. I mean, we've sided with people before in the past for a common goal. I wouldn't call it outrageous to negotiate on certain things with the Taliban. It is what it is.
No, absolutely not. I'm not suggesting that at all. Could I go to your first question, though?
Please.
Like Frank McKenzie, like General McKenzie, it's not our purview to share specific discussions with the president in terms of national security decision-making. But it was our opinion at the time, and it's been very consistent.
And still
And I would
is.
also tell you that this administration did, and I was part of it, along with the Joint Chiefs, a very rigorous process. And
They were told everything, and it still ended up like it did. Unbelievable. They spent more time on Trump getting 2 scoops of ice cream than they have blaming Biden for this fiasco.
this president was one of the most informed decisions that you can imagine in terms of all sides of the argument. We in the military, in the uniformed military, we look at the cost, the risk to force, the benefit, et cetera, in a narrow, focused view. Other decision makers have a much wider angle.
Well, that's a nice tap dance. They see the bigger picture. We only see the small, narrow picture. Well, the small, narrow picture was Afghanistan. It was. And it's a shame what happened. And 13 U.S. service members died. It's amazing to me. God knows how many hundreds and hundreds of people died. They were Afghan citizens. They're people, too. And most of them, especially the fairly young ones in their 20s and early 30s, that's all they've known and have memory of is the USA and freedom. And now look where they are. And they're stuck there. And it's Biden's fault. Let's tell the truth here. Not even Milley would give advice to withdraw the way they did. Not even the worst commander or general in the U.S. Army would do it. But that's the way it was done. And they had to deal with a really crappy hand. It's unbelievable why Biden isn't getting more crap, and his approval rating should be below 30%. We'll see. Like I said, everybody's guilty, so nobody's to blame. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.